Hello, hello, hello. Coming to you today from my apartment balcony, just changing things up because we're doing something a little different today. In part because today is Allie and my anniversary, so we don't have time to dawdle today. But also, we're taking a break from gameplay, even though I'm finally wearing a gaming shirt. We're doing something a little different than gameplay today. We're going to look at some Tolkien memorabilia. And specifically, we're looking at the stuff that I recently found in my parents' garage as I was helping them clean it out. Collections of mine and my siblings. It's not a huge collection, but there's some fun stuff in here that I'm excited to showcase today. Most of it is, of course, movie merch, but we'll start with something that is not directly related to any of the movies because it predates the movies, and that is, of course, the 1999 Tolkien calendar. I know you think so, Charlie. So this is the 1999 Tolkien calendar illustrated by Alan Lee. And when they say calendar illustrated by Alan Lee, I think they mean Alan Lee already made all these illustrations and then they just put them in a calendar for 1999. Being a 1999 calendar, it says the illustrations are copyright 1997. I don't know if that's when all of them were painted or if that's just when the most recent one was. But if the calendar was published for 1999, then that means by the time we were using this calendar, Alan Lee was already working on the movies. But this is pre-movie art of Alan Lee. It also says Tolkien calendar, but it is exclusively The Hobbit calendar. Starts with this little, faint sketch of Bilbo in his kitchen with a little description, a little history of the Hobbit. Bilbo Baggins was a hobbit who never went for adventures until Gandalf the Wizard and his dwarves persuaded him to go. He had a very exciting time fighting goblins and wargs and returned home rich. When 10-year-old Rainer Unwin produced this report for his father, publisher Stanley Unwin, he had no idea that the manuscript he had thus recommended would go on to become a remarkable success. Neither did its author, J.R.R. Tolkien, professor of Anglo-Saxon at Oxford, when inexplicably he jotted the famous opening sentence, "In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit," on a blank sheet while examining papers. Now, I had always heard that it was on a student's homework he jotted that, but maybe it was just a blank sheet to the side. Yet within a year of its publication, The Hobbit had won the New York Herald Tribune Prize for Children's Literature and was set to become a classic. There is more traffic outside my balcony than usual, so maybe this was not a great idea, but whatever, we're set up now. First published on 21st September 1937, The Hobbit is now recognized as an international bestseller. It has been translated into 25 languages and has sold over 35 million copies worldwide. The pictures contained in this year's calendar are taken from the commemorative edition of one of the most influential books of our generation, The Times. So these are illustrations Alan Lee did for a specific publication of The Hobbit then. Published in 1997 to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the publication of The Hobbit, it contains 25 specially commissioned paintings and a wealth of line illustrations by Alan Lee. The English-speaking world is divided into those who have read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and those who are going to read them, says the Sunday Times. So I have not gotten my hands on that 60th anniversary edition that all these Alan Lee illustrations originated in, but considering there are not 25 months in the year, I'm guessing this calendar does not contain all of the paintings, but we'll look at the paintings it does have, and note that they don't seem to be in any particular order. As far as I can tell, there's no real thematic relevance to what months the paintings go with, and also they are not just in order as presented in the book. Like they are not in chronological order, because we start here with out of the frying pan into the fire. See the dwarves being chased up the tree, with the little quote, "Just at that moment, the wolves trotted howling into the clearing. All of a sudden, there were hundreds of eyes looking at them." And you can see all the eyes. I don't know how well they're showing up on iPhone camera, but the eyes are in the darkness there, and you can't prove they're all wolves. Some of them could be all the various other creatures I just had to fight in the Game Boy game. Yes, Hobbit Jungle Cruise overlay when. Then we get to February, where we are now approaching the Lonely Mountain. The land about them grew bleak and barren. There was little grass, and before long there were neither bush nor tree, and only broken and blackened stumps to speak of, ones long vanished. They were come to the desolation of the dragon. And here we see the little illustration underneath appears to be Tolkien armoring up Bilbo for the battle. What was the one on January? It was under the out of the frying pan into the fire were the eagles rescuing them. So maybe within a single month there's relevant illustrations. Into March we go with the spider's webs in Mirkwood. Bilbo was horrified now that he noticed them for the first time, dangling in the shadows, to see a dwarvish foot sticking out of the bottoms of some of the bundles, or here and there the tip of a nose, or a bit of beard or a hood. And underneath that, we just have a collapsed dwarf. And like I said, while I was going through these pages, changing the month, I had no idea that at that very moment, Alan Lee was working on concept art for the movie. Okay, so for April, we have Over Defensive Thorn and the Dragon. And the Dragon. Who are you that come armed for war to the gates of Thorin, son of Thrain, king under the mountain? And next we have, I believe this is going into Rivendell. There was only a narrow bridge of stone without a parapet. But then underneath we got a goblin attack. For June, okay, we got the eagles rescuing the dwarves. Again, not right after the painting of them up the trees. And then we have these little dwarfs that look like they hatched out of eagle eggs. But, of course, as Charlie informed us, dwarf eggs are a different thing than bird eggs. Then in the middle is just Gandalf and the dwarves looking over the map as Bilbo looks very uneasy with all of this. And this is just meant to be a poster for when the calendar is no longer useful. Now you can hang it as a poster. I'm trying to place who Bilbo looks like. Like, this take on Bilbo looks familiar to me, but I can't place who he reminds me of. Then in July, we have the Elven Kingdom in Mirkwood. The king's cave was his palace, and the strong palace of his treasure, and the fortress of his people against their enemies. So, dwarves being captured by elves. And here's just a hobbit in the middle of a bunch of dwarves. And boy, if that isn't given the energy of the meme of Homer in the lesbian bar. And then the same painting we got on the cover. So far chronologically, the first scene we've encountered. It's not like you, Bilbo, to keep friends waiting on the mat and then open the door like a pop gun. And then underneath, just some sketches of the Hobbit hole. But this illustration I tried using once back in the days where, instead of social media posts, everyone made fan sites for all their fandoms. Everyone made little web pages with pictures and everything. I was working on a Tolkien fan site, when I was probably 12 or so. And in those days of the internet, it was common to have like an entry page that was just like a click here to enter. And I was planning on using this image and also having the website play the soundbite of that scene from the BBC 1968 radio adaptation, because I am nothing if not predictable. All right, I believe we have Lake Town here. From one hall shone many lights, and there came the sound of many voices. Yes, well, fan films were on the rise at the time, but there was no YouTube, so there was nowhere really to host fan films, and you had to fight for web space. And then here we have the Lonely Mountain with underneath the raft of barrels making its way to Lake Town. Somebody picking up a delivery downstairs. I don't know if that's coming through in the audio. October. Okay, I guess having October be the Goblin Town, that's Halloweeny enough. That's almost appropriate. Said the Great Goblin. So you say. Might I ask what you were doing up in the mountains at all, and where you were coming from, and where you were going to? These, I'm not going to blame Alan Lee specifically for this so much as, he's a product of his influences, but some of these goblins, let's just say it's hard to draw goblins without looking like you're invoking some various racist stereotypes. And then there's just these three goblins. These goblin stooges. Now we're talking. They had hardly gone any distance down the tunnel when a blow smote the side of the mountain like the crash of battering rams made of forest oaks and swung by giants. So this is Smaug demolishing the secret entrance and trapping Bilbo and the dwarves inside. And that's for this month. And that's today. I feel like I should have a Demi Adijuibe, that's today shirt. And then for December, I guess this is somewhat appropriate. It is it is Thorin's funeral. So it is about endings. They buried Thorin deep beneath the mountain, and Bard laid the Arkenstone upon his breast. So it looks like there was quite a turnout for Thorin's funeral, which is quite respectable. And then I'm going to guess this is Thorin just going out in a blaze of glory. And we have about the author and about the artist. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien was born on 3rd January 1892 in Bloemfontein. I'm not even pretending to get that right. In the Orange Free State. In early 1895, his mother, Mabel, returned to England with Ronald and his younger brother, Hilary, exhausted by the climate. After his father's death from rheumatic fever, the family made their home at Sarehole near Birmingham. This beautiful rural area made a great impression on the young Ronald, and its effect can clearly be seen in his later writing and his pictures. Mabel died in 1904, leaving the boys to the care of Father Francis Morgan, a priest at Birmingham Oratory. At King Edward School, Ronald developed his linguistic talent and later began to invent languages of his own. Blah, 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 World War I. Then he started writing. Etc., etc. Then Alan Lee. Alan Lee, whose biography I know less about. When George Allen and Unwin published a book called Castles, illustrated by a young English artist, they knew they had made a great discovery. Alan Lee works in watercolor, in delicate, misty shades, and he has a great love of landscape. His paintings have an ethereal quality, which is both profoundly evocative and extremely English in style, perfectly suited to the portrayal of Tolkien's Middle-earth. He undertook the major commission to illustrate The Lord of the Rings for an edition which celebrated the centenary of J.R.R. Tolkien's birth, which was in 1992. A huge task involving the creation of 50 color paintings. Now, for the diamond anniversary of the publication of The Hobbit, we commissioned Alan to produce 25 color paintings and a wealth of line illustrations. Famous throughout the world for his delicate pencil illustrations and watercolor paintings, Alan is the holder of many prestigious awards, including recently the Kate Greenaway Medal for his illustrated edition of the Iliad. Other work includes Fairies with Brian Froud, the Mabinogion, I don't know, Castles, and Merlin Dreams, which sounds like the name of a prog rock band. Alan Lee discovered the world of Middle-earth as an art student. Already fascinated by folklore and mythology, Tolkien's work inspired and invigorated Alan's own work and had a strong influence on his chosen path as an artist of the mythic and fantastic. He now lives and works on the edge of Dartmoor in southwest England, an area itself full of lore and mythology. And they couldn't tell us at the time, but he was beginning to work on Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy as a concept artist. Speaking of which, let's move on to movie-related merch. So these are two figurines that I believe a family friend picked up for us in England at some place because they have a pounds price point. I believe they picked these up as souvenirs. So we got a Frodo figurine and an Aragorn figurine. And in case you need reminding how long ago 2001 was, visit lordoftherings.net, America Online keyword Lord of the Rings. In case you need a reminder that 2001 was 22 years ago. Okay. Copyright Racing Champions. Tyersville, Iowa appears to be the manufacturer of this. Detailed scale models not designed and intended for play, so I must not play with this. But let me at least take a look. Deep under the foam. It looks like he's in Shelob's web. This is heavier than I remembered it being, but let's see if the focus will change. No. Can I get you to focus on Frodo? I guess not. Well, I'll post pictures. It's a decent little Frodo. The neckline makes it look like he's wearing a chin strap, but it's a really detailed little guy. The face only looks so much like Elijah Wood, but there's also only so much you can do with a figure this small. He honestly looks a little more like Martin Freeman's Bilbo, like this kind of predicted that Bilbo. And now the Aragorn fellow. He's all wrapped up as well. There we go. I think if the box didn't tell me, I'd have trouble figuring out which one was, if this was Aragorn or Boromir, but it is indeed Aragorn. And they're not exactly to scale to each other, but Frodo's a bit shorter. They are about as to scale as the dwarf in the Finnish Lord of the Rings is, as Gimli is to the other humans there. But these are really, really cool little figurines. I think we had them, like my brother and I had them on display in the desk in our bedroom for a while, and then we boxed them back up for their protection. And that's why they're in as good shape as they are 20 odd years later. But we're not done yet, because there's another category of movie merch. And everything else I have today comes from kids' meal toys. Believe it or not, for those of you who weren't there back then, you might have trouble remembering this. Fellowship of the Ring had a Burger King partnership when it came out, at least in the US. So here is the bag that a Burger King Big Kids meal came in. For those, I don't know if they still do the Big Kids meal, but it was like the middle ground between the Kids Club meal and the regular grown-up meal. It's Lord of the Onion Rings, Return of the Burger King. They did have cups, and I know we collected them, but I haven't been able to find them. I did not find them in my parents' garage, but they might be just in a box we didn't open. But what we did have, again, the kids' meal bag, which invites you to enter the reading fellowship. Join the reading fellowship. And you could win $5,000 towards college tuition. Tell us in 20 to 30 words about any book you've read. We want to know why you liked it. Just log on to BurgerKing.com to download an entry form. Then send us your entry, a fellowship sweepstakes, P.O. Box, blah, 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 Blair, Nebraska. For book ideas and reading lists, log on to Amazon.com/BKBigKids and click on the Lord of the Rings Big Kids Boutique. So I may have to dig through Wayback Machine to see what that website looked like. But even back then, Amazon was partnering with New Line for Lord of the Rings related things 20 years before Rings of Power. Bring the Ring of Power to life. Collect and trade cool Big Kids Lord of the Rings toys with your friends and family. So there's games and activities here where you provide the secret code Speak Friend. And not only that, but the Burger King Big Kids Adventures newsletter. I found 4 of these in my parents' garage. I took home 2 of them. But this had all sorts of activities to do, basically placemat activities. There's a maze through Orthanc, which seems like a pretty base level design for Orthanc on the top. That's not quite the Orthanc parapets, but and then advertisement for Collect Them All. And dear watcher, would it surprise you to learn that my family did indeed collect them all? This is all of the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, Burger King kids meal toys, which all stand on their displays, and you put them around in a circle, and in the center you put the ring, and you twist the ring around, and they all say their little catchphrase. Now, I don't know if the voice boxes on these still work or not, so I don't know if they can still say their little catchphrase. But here's what I do know. For tomorrow's Patreon stream, we're going to put this together. Tomorrow on Patreon, I am going to set this all up, have them all around in the circle, and we are going to make the display of 2001 era Lord of the Rings Burger King kids meal toys and put it all on display, see if they still say their catchphrases. That's what we are going to do on tomorrow's stream, only on patreon.com/Doggins. I am very excited to play with toys. That wraps up this look at this collection today. Join us tomorrow on Patreon. Any pledge level gets you access to the live stream. And also, if you just join Patreon for tomorrow, but then cancel it afterwards, you won't be charged for anything. If you just want to join us in the live stream. And I'm very excited to set, because we definitely had this set up on the dresser in Nick and my bedroom growing up. So I am excited to recreate this And we might also just do some of the activities in the Burger King newsletter. So that's what we're doing on Patreon stream tomorrow. In the meantime, I am going to go spend the rest of the day with my wife to celebrate our anniversary. So I will see you tomorrow on the Patreon stream. And until then, this is Dave signing off.